Hey everybody, I hope you're having a great day. Today's the day that we're going to do the last part of the fish book. We're going to do the cover. So for the cover today, what you're going to be needing is to print out the fabric portion of it. You don't have to do this on fabric, you could just print it out on paper and that would be certainly fine. But if you wanted to do it with fabric, to have that fabric feel and the fringiness of it, I'll have the link below of the tutorial that I show how I do that. You want to print out this portion, the map of the fishing location, and then if you want to cover your book up in the print, you can go ahead and print this one out too. Okay, so this one is printed and it's on the paper still, so when you have it on the paper, just go ahead and rip it off. It's a nice paper. And then what we're going to do, we're going to cut a background to secure it to make it so you can get that fringing effect on it. So what I'm going to do first, and I could have done this while it was still on the paper actually, just to give you a heads up. If this were still on the paper, it would have more that it was holding to. Let me see if it'll still kind of, I'm going to cut it this way just because it holds my fabric straight. I'm going to cut around the edge of my front and back cover. The bottom paper that I have on it doesn't matter. I'm going to be throwing that away. And then once I have this cut out, I'm going to fuss with the edges just to create a little distressed fringe type feel, like it was, like it's been around the block a little bit, like it's been used by some hands that have been holding it. Okay, now that we have that cut out, I am going to pull this paper off and pull this paper off. And actually, now that I think about it, brilliant idea here. You can take just this paper that we just cut, hold it up to this, and then just cut it smaller. Alright? So that's what I'm going to do. New technique. So I'm going to kind of go there. These are the same size, but so all I'm going to do is take my scissors, and as I cut it out, I'm going to cut it out a little bit smaller than the edge there. And then I can hold it up to my piece and kind of see if I made it small. So I think I could go even a tad bit smaller, so I'm going to do that. You can also do this on your cutting board if you want your lines to be just nice and perfectly straight. I commend you if you want to do that. Boom! I like it. That's fine. So actually, since they are the same size, I'm just going to ignore this line that I already did. I'm going to hold this one up to it. I'm going to cut it right along that cut line. Okay, now I have my two pieces of cardboard. You can, at this point, pull out your glue. What you want is a tacky glue, something like this one. This is the Scotch. I wouldn't recommend using the Fabri-Tac at this portion because the chemicals in the Fabri-Tac will, depending on your type of printer, it might actually interact with your printing. So if you look on this one, and it actually creates kind of a cool look. But if you look on this one, see how like some different colorings, it kind of, I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of like blues kind of bleeding through. It creates a bleeding feel. So if you wanted to do that, I would go ahead and go do that. So this is just from putting along the edges when I was adding the fringing to it. And I didn't do that on the front area. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and take my glue, and I'm going to create a nice, even, gotta get enough out of there. Alright, I'm going to create a nice, even, smooth it out, because I want a nice, even surface that I'm going to be putting it onto, getting all those edges. I want to make sure it's nice and wet and sticky. And then placing it on. So I'm applying some pressure because I do want to make sure that it's kind of getting into some of those fibers and holding on nicely. Like that. And then I'm just going to kind of let that dry and cure. Move on to my next one. I'm going to take a little paper clip and poke my glue a tad bit more. So it's a little bit more friendly coming out. It's being a little bit shy. Alright, here we go. Yeah, no. So a little while back, I left my glue open, and I came back the next day to find it on my tabletop. And so since then, I've been having problems with how the glue comes out. So it's my fault. So I can use my handy dandy little spatula that I bought not that long ago and kind of move my glue around. Okay, gets it nicely along the edges. Grab my fabric, make sure it goes over, and then lay it. Make sure I don't glue it to my desk. Now that I have that, I can go along the edges of my fabric, kind of pull it out, mess with it, make sure it's all my edges are good. Like some of mine are a little coming up. I'm going to go back and I'm going to glue those up. Make sure it's nice and glued. I don't want to do that too early though, because if I do, it might disturb it too much, areas that were maybe still going to be cured and glued. So use your judgment on that. Don't mess with it too early, but do make sure that your edges are down. So I'm getting a nice frayed look. I'm just kind of clipping off the strings that I'm pulling out from it. So, and it stops at the area where I have my paper glued to the back. So can you see how that's frayed now? I like it. I'm going to dry the back of this one. Okay, a little touch up. Nice. So let's pull out our book. Make sure that you have your book positioned in the right direction. So I want this one with the pocket over here, so that's the front. And the front has writing on the bottom. That's going to go there. So what's going to go underneath that is your cheesecloth. You want to grab your cheesecloth, and we're going to start working on that. So what you want to also grab is the twine that you're going to secure it. Now this is an inexpensive twine, which makes a wonderful look on the book. The thing that you need to know about this is that it's not something strong that's going to last really well. So what I did with this one, I went back over it with glue to kind of hold those fibers together. So just be aware of that as you're selecting your closure. If you want to use something else, that's perfectly fine, like a cotton one or something, go right ahead. So what we want to keep in mind is that our closure is going to wrap around from the front to the back. Okay, so I've got it to the front corner. I'm going to wrap it 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to just do it 5 to make sure, because we're going to be winding it around our twigs when we get there. It's better for it to be longer than not long enough. So we've got that. And we're going to put that down underneath here. like that. So that's going to be coming around. At this time, what we can do also is just prepare our edges so that we don't forget. If you want to have any distressing along the edges on the outside, anything in addition to what you already have, go ahead and grab your ink and go along the edges. This is Tim Holtz vintage photo. If you want a darker look, you can use like his walnut one, whatever you want to do. But now's a good time to do it. Just get it done and out of the way so it's not forgotten. Okay. Make sure it's on the proper position again. I'm going to put this one to the side so I don't get them mixed up. So what I'm going to do now is use my cheesecloth. I'm going to use just a little portion of the aqua color. I don't need much, but if you can see from this one, I have some peeking out the bottom. I have a little bit peeking out the top, just to kind of bring a little bit of that color in. What I'm mostly using, and it's not even very much, it's the this is white cheesecloth. Now if you haven't already like a coffee dyed, or they sell a cream colored cheesecloth, that's great. If you don't, take your cheesecloth and take your ink and just kind of add the coloring to it. And that's what I'm going to do. So just kind of blotting it on a little bit, we'll add that color. So at this point, you're going to be putting just a little peeking bit of your cheesecloth around it. For this, you can either use a white glue and let it dry, or you can use a hot glue. The thing to keep in mind with the hot glue is it'll add a little bit of bulk. You can also use the Fabri-Tac because you have it protected with this layer right there, so it's not going to change what your image looks like. So I'm going to hold this up and I'm going to start cutting. And for the moment, I'm going to use my Fabri-Tac. Now I've mentioned this before. I love the Fabri-Tac, but I'm really cautious about the fumes that come from it. Okay, put a row of it there. Add your cloth and just make sure it's sticking out enough. You can always cut it off if it's sticking out too far, so don't worry about that. Turn it, and as you turn it, careful with it on your fingers if you're touching the actual print portion of the cover. Okay, I'm going to add a little more. This stuff is so sticky. Gonna use the lid rather than my fingers to kind of press into it. Stick it on. Glue along the edge and place my cheesecloth. So now that's going to be the bottom over here. I'm going to take my blue peel it apart and then just put a little portion sticking out down there. Just gluing right on top of what I already did. And I'm not going to worry about it sticking out too far or too much because I can always go back and trim it. At this point my hands are, you know, sticky, so I have to really work. So what I might even do is when I go back is cut off some of the white or your cream colored one to make sure that this one shows more. So I've got that on the bottom and I want to put a little at the top. I'm going to just peel this one back And that's how I'm gonna, because for me I have a little space right there, and that's how I can ensure that that is going to be showing and sticking out at the top. And so then I'm going to just kind of place that in there and then bring my other one back up, and it sticks out nicely. So I'm going to let that dry and do the same exact thing to your other piece. Okay? Okay, these are ready now, and clearly I have too much on there. But like I said, it's no problem. I'm just going to go around the edges, and I'm going to clip to where I want it. I can hold it up to my book, and I can kind of see what I want. Like, I know I've got way too much of this. I'm not going to want this all there. So I'm going to clip, give it a little haircut, move it around again because I want it grungy looking, but I don't want it to be like these big long edges to be the full attention of the book. So I'm just gonna give it a little haircut, and then when I put the book together I can always go back and do a little bit more. That's really kind of fun. There, so it's gonna look like that. So you can look at it and see if there's anything else you want to do. When I look at that, I think, well, maybe I want a little blue just right on that side where my my little twig is going to be. So I think I'm going to do that really quick just because I can. Yeah, added that little extra color. It's not a lot, but it's enough that it just kind of is peeking out there and adds a little bit more to it. So once I have that, I want to get my twine, my closure situated. Alright, so you want to take your twine and it's going to be positioned coming underneath over here. So it's going to be underneath our panel. So you can either use hot glue, you can use fabric glue, whatever you use. You want to use something that you're confident is going to be secured right there. I've got my glue ready. I think I'm going to use my hot glue gun for this. So for this, I'm going to put a string, get it going. But I don't want it to go beyond where my book plate, my cover is going to be. So I want to flatten it down enough. So my glue is hot, but it's not so hot that I can't touch it. So I've got that nice and sticky on there, and now I'm going to use a little fabric glue over the top of it so it can kind of ooze in there as well. I don't know that it's necessary, but I kind of like that. I really want to make sure that that's going to work. So now I can take my cover and I can put it on the top. I need to decide where I want it positioned, and then I'm going to use my fabric glue to put it on the top. So I'm going to go and cover the areas that has my cheesecloth. Make sure it gets in there. And then also cover the back surface area in here. So I've got a nice generous amount. Double check, it's the front of the book. That line goes at the bottom, and then I'm going to place it on my book. I have a little time and wiggle room, so I want to make sure that that's nice and secured. I'm going to open up my book, make sure I'm not getting any bad part on here, and then I'm going to be pressing to help secure that area. So I've got my button under there, so So I'm going to open that up too if I can. And just press and make sure that it gives an opportunity to really get secured. Okay, nice. While that's drying, you can take your fish piece. What I want you to do, my hands are they're all full of glue. It's just how it's going to be. I gave you several options for your front plate. Pick out a plate that you like and glue it to a piece of cardstock to give it a little bit more stability and a little bit more depth. I'm going to, once again, use my white glue. I'm not going to cut it until I already have it secured to my paper because I want it to be a nice cut, that the edges are really together. So with these scissors, these are actually coated, and so I can go over the glue, but even then I don't like to. But just keep in mind that if your piece that you're cutting is wet with glue, it's going to go on your scissors, and then it just kind of gucks your scissors up. So don't do it. Wait for your glue to dry. Okay, cut nicely around the edges, and then we are going to take our fabulous distress ink and go around those edges and dirty them up a little bit so we don't see any white paper, any white edging, anything that's going to disturb the look of this plate. So a nice little fussy cutting. So see, I have little white edges around there. I don't want that. So grab my ink and boom, they're gone. So simple. I love it when it's like that. Easy peasy. And look at that. It's great. Okay. So that is nice and secured. I can close that back up. And this is going to go on top of my book. I'm going to wait to actually secure it though until I finish my closure. So going to the back, you can see that my twine goes across my spine and it goes under my back plate to secure it a little bit more, and then it comes out right here. So I'm going to do the same thing across the back and make sure that's in the middle. So my gun's probably getting a little hot right now, so I'm just going to use glue. I'm just going to use this one. So I'm going to secure it down. And I'm going to dry it with my glue gun. Not my glue gun. It'd be nice if I could do that. I want to make sure it's nice and sticky and secured. And then my heat gun. So you don't want to mess too much with the heat gun because it does start bubbling up and stuff. So just be aware of that. So once you have that in place and you think that it's secured sufficiently, I'm just going to put a few dots. Then we can go and move on and put on the back cover. The back cover, once again, we have it all beyond what we need to have, so we can look at it and see what we want to cut. I'm just going to trim it because I know it's way beyond what I want. Trim it to wherever you like. If you want a lot sticking out, by all means, keep it all sticking out. It's all what you want. It's all in the eye of the beholder. Whew, messy stuff. Okay, make sure your book is in the right direction. This one, it doesn't matter too much. Up is down, down is up, it seems. And you're going to have it equal areas from the top, the bottom, and this side. A little bit extra will be on the spine side to allow for the curvature and the wear and tear on that. At least that's what I think. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and glue this one up now. Get it all over my cheesecloth so it sinks into all those little holes, crevices. Okay, there we go. Got my glue. And I'm going to go ahead and place it on here. I have a little wiggle time. So as I press that, I do get glue on my hand, so I want to make sure that I'm not then pressing that glue into the page. I'm going to open it up, and I can press. If you can't open yours up and press, don't worry. Just kind of have it in a position and in a way where you can have some kind of a surface that you can put a force onto it. So mine, I can see, was just a little bit off, but this glue is wonderfully forgiving in the sense that you have a little bit longer dry time. Like if I were to use hot glue, boom, it's done. With this, I have a little wiggle room so I can change the position slightly. So I'm going to go around, make sure everything is nice and cozy and tight, and dry it. Okay, now that that's dry, I can see where it can come around. 1, 2. Let me put that down. Okay, it's going to be like this. Again, come around 1, 2, 3. So, but we need extra room. 1, 2, 3. It's going to come around like that. So at this time, what you can do, you can do it later too. Maybe do it later because you might want a little bit more flexibility on your twine. But we can see where we want this. Now, one thing that you can do is take your distress ink and just kind of go in here a little bit, right along the edges of where it says fish, to give it a little bit more depth. So I'm going to put that, I think I like it right about there. So I am going to use, I think I might, So I don't want to use my Fabri-Tac because that's going to come in contact with my map, and it will bleed, and I don't want it to bleed out from here. So I either need to use my white glue or my glue gun. I'm going to use my white glue. So this glue is designed for fabric as well as paper. Find its spot. I'm going to put it right about there. On this one, it looks like I put a little higher, but yeah, that's fine. And then I need to hold it down. I need to make sure it gets opportunity to adhere. Look at all these things coming off my fingers. So what I'm trying to do as I'm pushing on this, any glue that squishes out, I'm trying to just wipe it up with my fingers. Nice. So I think it looks nice and secure. I need to watch it so that as it's drying, in case it does start popping up a little bit, I want to come back to it. Now what I want to do, I want to wrap this around, and I want to work on my twigs. So I'm going to wrap it. And I'm going to want to make sure that I have a nice feel of space of how full. Like if you think you're going to put a lot more pictures or anything else in here, you want to allow a little bit more give for that. Okay, I'm going to grab my twigs. So I'm going to take my twigs, and let me tell you, these ones here are about 1 3/4 long. So it's enough to kind of wrap your thing around it. So I'm going to just break it. I'm going to just snap 2 of them off like that. And I'm going to weave my twine around it. So I'm going to say I'm going to do it right about there. And then I'm going to tie some knots within all of this. So I've got a few strands around, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this one at this point and then bring it through. Okay, there's probably not people out there that really have a plan and idea. I'm just kind of going with the flow and doing what I think works. So do whatever you think works. And just get it secured around your twines. So this little twine piece has a little bend, and so I want it pointing in that way rather than pointing in the other direction. So I kind of moved it around. At this point, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little bit of glue, and I'm going to use my hot glue here and start, oh, my hot glue's not on. I'm going to start pushing it in to make it sure it gets into the fibers of the twine. Alright, so I'm moving it around, putting a little squish in there, and just getting it to stick on some of the fibers. Getting it pushed down into the crevice between the two pieces of twine. And you can use like your fabric glue or whatever. You can use whatever. So now let's see what we've got. It's coming along nicely. I think I want mine lying this way instead of this way. Does that make sense? I want it on this edge. So I'm going to come back out once more. Going to wrap around this. I need to come out the bottom, I think. Okay, so I'm gonna try to tighten that up and then secure it on that portion right there. So I don't want to touch my glue gun, so I'm just moving it around with the lid, and now I can touch it. Just kind of push it into those fibers. There, I like that. So this one here gives me a little distance of pulling. So I can go, and now I can wrap it around like such. Okay. And then it gives me a little room for growth, so that if I add a little bit more things, it'll go closer to the edge. Now at this point too, I can decide if I want these a little bit shorter. Just grab you can try it by hand, or grab a wire cutter and clip them off a little bit. Mine are a little bit longer, just slightly maybe, than these ones, than my original one. So at this point, now we're going to do the sinkers. Well, I should have kept that going. Okay, so I've got this around where I think it's going to be. I'm going to wrap it around a few times, and then I'm going to wrap it around here. Let me just make sure. 1, 2, and then it's going to go around. So here's my sinkers. They're called water gremlins, egg sinkers. They're little barrel-shaped things. And it adds a wonderful weight to the end of your twine. Now, as you thread it, this wants to come apart. So if you just take a little bit of your glue and put it on the end, it makes a sharper tip so that you can put it through. So I'm going to put mine, make yours as long as you want. I've got my first one about there. And let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot, and then I'm going to add a bit of glue in that. So you can use a Fabri-Tac right there. You don't have to use the glue gun glue. It's just to hold it in place a little bit more. Give it a little more stability. And then I'm going to add another sinker just a little far down. You can put as many sinkers on as you want. I have 2 on there. A little closer. I'm going to go like that. So once again, I'm just going to tie a normal knot to get it secured to where I want it, and then I'm going to try and tie another one. And as I'm doing that, I am going to put some of the Fabri-Tac in the middle of the knot. So as I close it, it's going to squeeze into it. And then you can clip that off. I'm going to clip mine about there. You can see these ones finished. And I've got the little edge coming off. And here's these ones. So now that it's secured, I'm going to add just a touch more. Whoops. It's catching everything with this glue. I'm just going to kind of paint it on that little area just to kind of get in the fibers, and then kind of play around with it so they go into them. And I'll add a little bit more in this one too, because I can. Why not? Alright, put my lid on. So I'm thinking with this, you could even add more layers. You could add more cardstock to it, or you could take like a cereal box or something and put that something that has a little bit more depth to it. My original, I used a cutout, but I knew that's something that everyone couldn't do, so I wanted to make something that you could do. So let's see here. Mine's not completely stuck. I'm going to pull it off, and I'm going to add more. Okay, I'm gonna add more. I think I'm actually going to add like 2 more layers. I really want it to have a little bit more bulk to it. The only bad thing at this point is I've already cut the edges. Well, what a mess I'm making, huh? You could finish and call it good. Then I'm going to add Another layer after this. I'm getting a little reckless with my glue, I would say. Reel it in. And then I'm going to add one more layer. Okay. And then I'm going to dry it. Now it has some substance to it and it's sticking up more. Grab my distress ink. The thing you want to watch out for, I was sloppy with my ink there, and so can you see how there's a little bit of it catches the light? So you don't want to do that. Don't be sloppy like I just was. I'm going to kind of go over. And then I'm going to work this just a tad bit. And then place it on there. I really like that. I'm glad that I did that. Okay, I'm going to grab my white glue. Glue it up again. And it is going to come out the edges. I know. Put it there. And I like that. That really makes a difference. There you go. The last thing that you want to do is take your glue and go along your twine. It'll have a milky look in the beginning, but that'll all dry up. Don't worry about that. But this will just secure your twine so it's not just going to dissolve into nothingness as you're using your book. Let's just go ahead and paint it on and let it dry. I'm going to pull it over a little more. Whoa. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Do it that way. Putting a little bit on your tabletop and then touching it with your fingers rather than trying to chase your twine. Alright, so we're going to let that dry. And then take a look at our finished book. So here is our finished book. We now have the cover on, we have our fabulous closure going on, opens up, we've got all the edging, we've got their book, everything's complete in here, yikes! And then we have a wonderful back cover. There you go. I hope you enjoyed making this. I look forward to making another one of something and making it with you. So have a great day. I will talk with you later.